Welcome to Spidell's Federal Tax Minute. I'm your host, Catherine Zidane. This week, we're covering using a private letter ruling to waive the 60-day rollover requirement for fraudulent transfers from a retirement account. Get all the news you need to keep your clients current, as well as new tax planning strategies to minimize taxes throughout the year at Spidell's quarterly Federal Tax Update webinar. The next session is on October 22nd, and you can get details at spidell.com under webinars. Taxpayers who are victims of fraudulent schemes are often out of luck when it comes to tax relief. But victims who make a fraudulent withdrawal from a retirement account may consider using a private letter ruling to request a waiver of the 60-day rollover requirement to avoid including these withdrawals in income. And if the taxpayer is under age 59 and a half, they can also avoid the 10% early withdrawal penalty as well. Keep in mind, though, that the fee for making a PLR request for such a waiver is $12,500. Generally, a distribution from a qualified retirement plan is required to be rolled over to another plan or account within 60 days after receipt to be excluded from income. The IRS may waive the 60-day requirement in circumstances where the failure to waive the requirement would be against equity or good conscience, including casualty, disaster, or other events beyond the reasonable control of the individual. In determining whether to grant a waiver of the 60-day requirement, the IRS considers all relevant facts and circumstances, including errors committed by a financial institution, inability to complete a rollover due to death, disability, hospitalization, incarceration, restrictions imposed by a foreign country, or postal error, the use of the amount distributed, for example, in the case of a payment by check, whether the check was cashed, and the time elapsed since the distribution occurred. The IRS granted such a waiver in a 2024 private letter ruling where a taxpayer fell victim to a fraud scheme in which she was convinced that she needed to transfer the funds in her IRA to a, quote, safety locker facility because she had supposedly been the victim of identity theft. After making several transfers to the safety locker, the taxpayer became suspicious and called the police, who were able to track down and arrest the perpetrator. The taxpayer requested and was granted a waiver of the 60-day rollover requirement for the amount she withdrew from her IRA. Earlier in 2025, the IRS released a Chief Counsel Advice Memorandum providing guidance on the deductibility of theft losses from financial investments. The CCA outlines 5 scenarios where theft losses occurred to taxpayers who had invested in IRA and non-IRA brokerage-type accounts that generally invest in securities and other financial products. The IRS broke the 5 taxpayer scenarios into 3 categories. First, for taxpayers who authorized distributions and transfers to new accounts directly to a scammer, the IRS looked at the taxpayer's profit motive in making the transfers. Taxpayers who established that their motive was to transfer their investment funds from existing investment accounts to new investment accounts, either to safeguard their investments or make new investments, had a profit motive and therefore can deduct their theft losses. Second, for taxpayers who authorized distributions and transfers but were motivated to transfer funds to a scammer for non-investment scams, there was no profit motive and therefore the taxpayers cannot deduct their losses, at least not during TCJA years 2018 through 2025. And third, for taxpayers who did not authorize any distributions or transfers, the loss does not result from the taxpayer's actions, so the IRS looked at whether there was a profit motive in the original account from which the funds were stolen. We'll be covering these types of theft losses in greater detail at Spidell's Federal Tax Update webinar on December 18th and 19th. To register for this 8-hour year-end update and see all the topics that will be covered, go to spidell.com and click webinars. That's all for this week. Join us next time for another episode of Spidell's Federal Tax Minute.